I'm going to switch to English because I'm sorry, but last time I posted a presentation with the video, I had like 5,000 English people who said, okay, what are you saying on stage? So got to switch to English. Okay, just first question. Is there like any analytics expert in the crowd today? Okay, good. No one's going to point out my mistakes. And is there someone who's good in quantum physics? No one? Okay, perfect. Okay, that will come in handy yesterday. So just very quick, I'm not going to hop on stage like Steve Ballmer because like we did a team building yesterday, which started like that and very quickly went on like that, and unfortunately for me, ended mostly like that. So I'm going to stay around here. Okay, so today we're going to talk mostly about analytics. We're going to start with the user-centric versus session-centric analytics. It's a major difference. Then I'm going to cover what segments and the basics of segment. And we'll go on with the best practices for implementing segment. And of course, because I am who I am, and I don't want you to leave empty-handed, we'll get a bit nerdy and we'll cover some new growth hacks, which I'm going to share with you. So as Hugo said, I'm the head of growth marketing at Mention. I come from Apple, where I spent 5 years. I am also an entrepreneur. I'm a mentor. I've been in the internet stuff since '97, and I'm still not very rich. I'm working towards it. Important, I'm not a freelance guy, I'm not an agency, I'm not a consultant, I don't work for Segment either. I'm just like a die-hard user of Segment. I'm passionate about analytics, and I'm not a developer. Okay, I don't code. So anything which is here is supposedly be easy to understand by any marketer. Okay, I do have developers though who help me at Mention when needed. About Mention, what we do, we are a web and social monitoring app. We have over 300,000 users, including Spotify, Microsoft, Adobe, Amazon, Google, and a few others. Why are we relevant about analytics and segments? Well, we track about 10 million events per month all through Segment. That's a lot of events for that many users. So as I said about analytics, so we're not here to talk about quantum physics. We're here to talk about analytics. So to make good on this promise, quantum physics. So you might know this is like Schrodinger's cat, for those who know. So basically, very quickly, Schrodinger's cat means that observation determines the state. Okay, the cat is at the same time alive and dead in both states at the same moment. And that's true as long as you don't look in the box. And analytics is a bit the same thing. As long as you don't have KPIs or you don't look, well, you may have or may not have a business. Okay, we don't know. Okay, so it's exactly the same thing. Measuring is really the new seeing, and it's a competitive market. So if you're not excellent at tracking and analytics, other will be. That's a promise, and they will beat the hell out of you. Okay, they will get a better ROI, they'll get a better cost of acquisition, and you're going to lose to them. So you'd better get better at that. So that's it with quantum physics, actually. So something easy. No, that's not something easy. So that's what we'll cover at the end. That's what I presented 3 months ago here, and that's what you'll be able to do with Segment in about 30 minutes, which is send data back and forth to different tools. Okay, the most important thing about Segment and all those new analytics tools like Kissmetrics, Mixpanel, which you may be heard of, and others, is that they're user-centric. Okay, and the difference with user-centric versus session-centric is that session is looking at what happens from the viewpoint of your website, like how many times your home page was loaded, okay, and how long it was opened. And honestly, nowadays, it's interesting, but it's not that important. What's important is to look from the viewpoint of your customer, of your user, okay, in his life cycle. What does he do Okay, where he arrives from, where does he go, and when does he leaves and why? Okay, and if you do the tracking correctly, then you're going to have something a bit like that, which might look like a CRM, but actually it's not. Okay, that's an analytics tool, and you can see here we got all the data on what Maya did in terms of pages, actions, and who she is. Okay, so that's user-centric. So what's Segment? Segment basically is a hub. And to understand that, let's look at this small piece of code. This is what you would do if you wanted to record a purchase event across Kissmetrics, Google Analytics, Mixpanel, Custom.io. Okay? What that means is that you would have to put the code as many times as you have tools. And that's a huge loss of time. Each time you want to add a new tool, you have to go through all your website and redo all the events. And that's not what I want you to do. What I want you to do is to do it once, like that. With a simple API, you plug in the event once, and then you hand it over to your marketer. And if your marketer's like me, he's going to have fun, and he's going to just like activate tools. Okay? And then there's a user interface like that, with a flip of a switch, just with one click. You can use the event and send it as many times as you want to as many tools as you want. How many times? Well, for example, at Mention, that's my real stack of tools I use to segment. There's 17 of them. Okay? Some of them I'm using day to day. Some of them I'm just trialing. And we'll talk about trialing a bit later. That's a lot of tools. I don't think any developer would want to integrate that many tools in my app. Okay? So I said hub. And hub is because Segment actually collects the data from libraries, which could be a browser, mobile, or server-side, transforms the data like a dictionary, and then routes it, sends it to integrations. And there's like over 150 integrations like that. Let's look at the collection part. So collection can be either server-side, like there's like all those great libraries, which is fantastic if you want to record stuff which only happens server-side, like a billing event, or charging a credit card, or accepting an invitation for referrals. Of course, there's a browser side, and you can collect data from the user's perspective with a JS. There's also mobile. With those SDKs, you can plug in any analytics tools. You don't even have to wait for the reapproval of your app in the App Store. Okay? That's done on Segment side. There's also a Swift and Android, which I didn't put here. It's pretty recent, and Android Wear. So Swift and Android Wear. Last but not least, there's plugins. If you have like an e-commerce or a CMS, so it covers like the main e-commerce and CMS tools. That was for collection. So that covers supposedly almost any need. Now let's look at where can we send that data. Okay, so of course you've got analytics, because that's the main use or the historical use of Segment. Quite a lot of them. But then they added new categories. Just a few of them. Advertising here. Quite a lot of advertising tools, like including Twitter ads, Facebook ads, AdRoll. But also customer support. Okay, I haven't like listed everything here, but there's also like CRM, debugging, and like a lot of other tools. So what is it great at, Segment? Well, it's fantastic to hand off the tracking from the developers to the marketing and preparing your future. You implement once, and then that's it. You don't need to go through it again. You can trial a tool with actual data. Okay, so when you get like 60 days free of Mixpanel or Amplitude or any other tool, you just like click on the button, add your tracking data, and that's it. Your own data flows to that tool for the 60 days, and you can see how your data behaves on that new tool. And that's extremely powerful. You can also have all of your teams across your company have exactly the same data, be it like sales, marketing, or support, the same user IDs and the same events, which is like fantastic. You can have like bi-directional data flow, and I'll cover that a bit later. You can also debug. I mean, I've never done as much debugging as when I implemented a segment at Mention. And there's a person here who can state that. Like hundreds of bugs, which are app bugs, but you discover them because you want to do a throughout implementation of segment. You can use the data that you collected to send leads to your sales team into the CRM if you want to do like qualification, or you could use the data in terms of quantity to do some nurturing in your nurturing tool, okay, with extremely detailed emails. And yeah, last but not least, it's free to use for small projects, and I think it's 50,000 events per month. So that's what's Segment, but what's not Segment? Segment is not an analytics tool, okay? So you won't be able to analyze anything, okay? It's not a competitor to Mixpanel, Kissmetrics, or even Google Analytics, okay? The only thing you can do on it is look at the volume of events and the raw data for debugging purpose. That's it, okay? It's just a hub. The closest comparison is like Google Tag Manager, but technically it's not a tag manager, even though it loads the GS, because GTM it doesn't do any mapping whatsoever. Okay, it doesn't transform the data, it just passes it through. So how does Segment work? Well, there's those three main events, which is like the identify, the track, and the page calls. Let's go through them pretty quick. Identify is who's your user, and it's gonna add a user ID to any new user, which is like anonymous, or it's going to find the user ID for existing users, and it's going to add traits to that user. For example, a trait is name, my name's Guillaume. Okay, that's a trait, that's persistent. Track is what am I doing? Okay, so it's the main event handler. It's, for example, like purchasing items or using a feature in your app, okay? And page is where they are. So you could say, for example, my name's Guillaume, I'm speaking on stage, and I'm at the family. Okay, then we cover the three events. If we look at, for example, a button here, and we have like the home of Mention, and we've got a red button here. How do we call that event? Is it click signed up? Is it click red sign up button? Or if you want to be very precise, is it click signed up with email on a red sign up button top of page? Okay, well, if you do that, you're going to have issues. And I get to that right away. What you're supposed to do, and here's a very important part, you're supposed to split up that information between the event name and the property name. Okay, so the event is sign up. That's the name of the event. Inside that event, you can have like a hierarchy of data, which is the property, which is, hey, no, what's the button color? Where's the button? Okay, the button color is red. That's the value of the property. And the button's on the top of page. Okay, so event, property, property value. And that's extremely powerful. So what you don't want to do is this. Okay, this here is like maybe 15 or 20 times the same events with everything in the event name. If you do that, it's going to be almost impossible to analyze in any analytics tools. This is a real example. This example comes from Mention when I joined. Okay, it was almost impossible to use. What you want to do is transform that into one event and split the information of the location, the color, into the properties. Okay, I hope that's clear. That's extremely important. Let's go on over the features. So you can have a tracking plan on Segment, which is really great. It's a recent feature. You can find all the events that you ever sent, a historical view, and you can dive into an event and see the volume, as I said, or you can even look further and have the properties of those events. For example, here we got answer the NPS survey, and we have the rating, and we have the method of the NPS. Okay, that enables you to do some split analysis and say, for example, how do the people who rated Mention 8 or 9 behave compared to others? Okay, you have a debugger, so you can look at all the events that arrive in live, and exactly like the tracking plan, you can dive in, open an event, for example, the opened email event, and you can see the properties the properties that you have sent and the values of those properties. For example, here we've got number of mentions in email, 8. Then I can look if is there a correlation between the number of mentions in the email we sent and the number and the ratio of click. Okay, that maybe is going to help me do a better app. That's all the cool stuff in Segment. Now there's a few issues. Data storage and data access. If you go through Segments, it's very expensive. Okay, it's like 75K per year, which for startups is no-go mostly, especially in France. There's a workaround. There's actually 2 workarounds which I can advise. One is Amplitude, which is a great analytics tool that starts at $49 per month. Okay, that's dollars. And if you want to have Redshift access through Amplitude, it's $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which is like half the cost of Redshift through Segment. Second way is Keen.io. Keen.io gives you access to the raw data starting at $600 per month. Okay. The cheapest way is you can just like plug in the webhook. There's an outbound webhook from Segment and can just like spill the data into an S3 bucket. A bit harder to use, but that's free. Second issue, Segment is shifting from a model where the integrations were handled by Segment to a model where the integrations are handled by themselves. And for example, the Kissmetrics integration is handled by the Kissmetrics team, okay? Which is more scalable for them. It also means like there's a bit more lag and there's a bit more bugs, and sometimes the spec is not updated as it should. And last, not all integration options are available. Sometimes, for example, like Intercom is specific because it's a chat, at the same time it's a CRM, and there's like options on the integration, and you can't activate all of the options, such as like how it looks like, where it's activated and stuff. Okay. There's like 3 ways to go around Segment and do Segment style stuff. One is there's a free version, which is on GitHub, which is analytics.js. It's open source. If you want to host the GS yourself, up to you. There's also Snowplow and mParticle, which I don't know much about. I know they exist, and it's about the same business. Okay, so that was about Segment. Now let's see my best practices, my recommendations for tracking with Segment. What you want to know is that people do things. Okay, again, that's where we're looking at user-centric. So you want KPIs and you want people information. That's the first thing. Second thing is you want to start with the KPIs. You don't want to start with events. That's very important, okay? Do a collection of a few KPIs and see how they are calculated. So it's top to bottom. For example, a KPI is usually a division of like event A by event B. So we could say sign-up rate is sign-ups by visits. You want the sign-up rate? Fine. Go for those 2 events. Okay? How many should you track? I'd say 3 to 5 KPIs. So that's maybe, I don't know, anywhere between 5 to 10 events to start with. Don't do more at the beginning, otherwise you'll drown. Okay? Here I've put up a small list of the KPIs you should track based on what stage you are. So you've got Bootstrap, Startup, and Growth. It's an addition. So if you're in, for example, Bootstrap, you're going to take like the KPI of signups and conversions. And if you're on a startup, you can add the sign-up rate, which needs visits, and the activation rate, which needs, like, for example, when does the user get value. Okay? Pre-start, so Bootstrap is like ideation conception. A visit is the display of interest, and signed in is came back. So that's how we can calculate the retention rate. For example, retention rate is the ratio of sign-ups to sign-ins. Okay? I think there's enough here. Now, if you're like me, you're going to do a bit more. I'm going to be very honest. That's half of the KPIs we have at mentions. That's like page 1, then there's page 2. And you can see here that I have put not only the KPIs, but how they're calculated, where does the data come from, and how I want to display them. Okay? And I can share that because when someone in your company actually uses the KPI, If it's a bit like a complex KPI, they don't know what it's based on, okay? And they might make wrong assumptions. So that's about choosing your KPIs. Before you move on, there's naming. Naming is extremely important. We talked a bit about it. Okay, let's dive a bit more. For example, here I've got 4 events which are email sent, email just sent, customer your email sent. Okay, that doesn't work because in most tools you can't aggregate different events. If you split them, if there's like a copy error, that's 2 different events and that's it. It's dead. You can't go forward. So you need to define a naming convention and stick to it. Okay, and one way to stick to it that I did is to define a naming convention, a document, and you share it with your whole team. Okay, there's a rule here. Do not add events without updating the documentation. Okay, otherwise you're going to get spanked. That's one way to do it. There's like other ways to do it. That works pretty well. Okay. Second thing is like naming convention. The best practice is to have the object first and the action afterwards. Okay, object action. For example, subscription started. Okay, that works also with, for example, feature X used or subscription upgraded, subscription downgraded. That's useful because then when you have all those drop-down menus in the analytics and email tools, you can drill down very easily to what you want, to the object you want to handle. Okay, if you put the verb first, you can have like started, and you can have like 50 started events, and you can lose a bit of time. Okay, naming. Next up, tracking plan. So tracking plan, there's like 3 ways I can recommend. Original way is doing like a tracking spreadsheet like that, where you put all your events, all the properties of each event, and you give that to your developer team, and they implement. It works well, okay? And that's what we used at Mention for implementation. Of course, most people don't understand that very well, so there's also a visual layout you can do. Okay, so I discovered the Mention app, went through all the screens, I laid out all the events, all the objects on the AAARR funnel, and I did a visual layout with the events and their properties. That's really useful if you have like business users who want to understand, hey, this event, when does it happen? Okay, that's pretty good. Now there's something a bit better. We talked earlier about segments tracking plan, and you can go ahead and create yours there. And the good thing is that not only is it going to recommend standard events, it's also going to recommend standard properties, and it's going to give you the code for that. So if you don't have specific needs, go ahead with that. Okay. Important thing, if you have like mobile and web apps, it's extremely important that you use the same naming for the same user intention across all of these apps. Okay, otherwise you won't be able to merge. So for example, a signed up on mobile has to be signed up, same naming on the web app. Okay, only if you do that, you'll be able to do like a split analysis of mobile versus web behavior. Okay, if you say like signed up on mobile, signed up on web, that's it. It's finished. You can't do anything. Okay. What I recommend is this: is that you have one segment organization, and you separate each app project. Okay. The good thing about that is if you use the same naming and you separate the project, in case you have like a hierarchy like project mobile, project web, you can put the same keys for the same app within each project, which means that the data is going to split at segment, it's then going to rejoin on the app, which means that gives you the flexibility to separate or regroup, activate some tools only for mobile or for web, or send the data of mobile to a debugger version on one app. Okay, and that's going to regroup. That's my recommendation. Server side versus client side. You usually want to use both because some data is only accessible on server. For example, like all the billing events, renew events, all the referral events when they're accepted. That's complex to do or impossible to do client-side. Client-side is also very good for everything that happens in the browser, like button clicks, video, when someone viewed a video and stuff. There's a lot of standardization that's going on Segment, so it's not a defined situation right now. It's improving, but for example, if you're doing like A/B testing, emails, live chat, e-commerce, go ahead and look at the spec. There's some standard events. And that's important because the way that Segment works is it's a hub and it maps the data correctly. And for standard properties and standard events, this is going to activate a special feature in some of your integrations. For example, if we look at the e-commerce event and we look at the completed order, okay, only if you use that event exactly like that with the revenue property are you going to be able to look at revenue data in Google Analytics or Kissmetrics. Okay, if you say, for example, any other event with any, for example, like not revenue but billing, then you won't have the revenue. It's not going to be recognized because the mapper of Segment cannot smartly recognize, hey, he's sending a completed order event. Well, let's map that correctly. Okay, that's not going to work. So look at the standard traits, and it covers stuff like user ID, the age, the gender, and so on. Okay, there's like a few dozens of those. Usual mistakes when I do some recommendation on implementation. So don't do any of these if you take a screenshot, okay? So don't start from your interface, okay? Don't try to track everything, it's not gonna work. Don't start without a tracking naming convention. Don't forget the standard events and properties, and don't ignore aliasing, otherwise you can have like duplicates everywhere. Very often when people come and see me and ask like for 1 hour one-on-one analytics, let's say training, I see them doing some bottom to top. So like they take all the screens, all the buttons, and they lay out everything, and then say, now what? Well, now nothing, you have nothing. So you can start again. So really start from your KPIs and decide what you want to understand. 2 frequent objections, people who say, I don't have the time for this. I strongly disagree. Now is a better time than ever, really. There are huge benefits to starting early. For example, I helped a startup which was, I'd say, really bootstrapped, and we did a lean validation process with Segment, and we were able to get KPIs, like they did 1 weekend of creating the website, half a day of implementation. I gave them a $150 coupon on AdWords, and they got the cost of acquisition, the conversion rate, the average value of conversion, and so on. And they were able to see some investors and get some money, which is pretty early. So that's 1. 2, people who say, hey, I'm just going to do it myself. It seems pretty easy to do all of this stuff. You could try. If you think that like maybe months of your time is inferior to what they offer for $100, maybe you're a genius, in which case, let's talk. But I really think that you should rethink your priorities. A pretty large company recently told me that they were going to do it in-house. They called me back 3 months later saying, well, we actually changed and switched to Segment. It works well, and they spent 3 months trying to do it. So don't do that. Okay, last part, growth hacks. So we now are able to collect lots of data. We have it clean. We have it in our apps. Well, what do we do? First, one important thing, that's my vision of growth hacking. Like any vision can compete, no problem, that's my vision. My vision is that all marketing is about creating a difference between the real and the perceived value of your product. And the difference is your margin. Okay, that's what I learned 15 years ago. The new, what we call growth marketing or new marketing, is about the difference between the real and the perceived time spent, okay, from a customer's account, from his perspective. And the higher the difference, the more margin, which means that the more data you have and the more scalable you can do something with it, the more margin you get. And good thing is that Segment helps you capture tons of data on your customer, which means that Segment is at the base of growth hacking. A few examples, what can I do with such data? Well, as I said quite a few times, you can do some split variation testing based on a property. Here we have the NPS score, which I talked about. I can see how the retention between the sign up and the sign in is based on the happiness or the perceived happiness from the user's perspective. Good thing you can see people who rate us 10 out of 10 have twice the retention at 3 weeks than those who rate us 5 out of 10. Okay, twice the retention. Okay, that works because the NPS score is a property of the event, which is rated as NPS. Second is you can capture third-party data. So we saw Segment as a tool to collect data on your web apps, on your mobile apps. But sometimes things happen outside of that perspective. Okay, for example, let's say emails. We'll get to that. Okay, when someone does something outside of your web app, usually you don't know anything. Well, there's a way to get that data through a webhook and pipe that webhook through an API call back to Segment. One example of that, Customer.io is a great emailing tool. They have a webhook which then pings us to say, hey, this user opened an email, this user clicked on an email. Okay, we take that data, we reformat it a bit, and we send it forward to Segment.io, which means all of our tools have the information on who opens emails, okay, and who clicks and who doesn't open emails. If you do that, if you have that webhook listener, such as us, well, you can also use Zapier, because Zapier knows how to do webhooks, which means you can plug any tool that Zapier is compatible with into Segment. So, a few crazy users. I did that to plug in the webinars into Segment. I know who's registering for a webinar. I also did that for a Google spreadsheet, which means I'm able to update my customer database on any tools just with the Google spreadsheet. For example, like for a type form. Okay, you can push the data from a form to Segment. That's really, really useful. Once you've done that, we said the data comes back. So you can send the data back to the third-party tool, okay, and use the consequence of that data and do you can spin the wheel of data, okay? Example of that, hey, that's the slide we saw earlier. So how does this work? That's for the NPS. Satismeter is the NPS tool that we use. So that's a bi-directional data flow. So a survey, NPS survey is displayed in-app. The customer rates us. We get that data, and we send that data to Customer.io to do some follow-up or some reminders for the customer. Okay? What's important to understand is that that survey isn't mentioned data, it's Satismeter data. Okay? We're just piping it and sending it back, capturing it, sending it to Segment, Customer.io, and sending emails. If you do that, you're then able to do extremely targeted emails. So I like to do like visual apps. That's all of the emails, well, not all, it's cut at the bottom. That's part of the emails that we have at Mention. Actually, there's like 120 emails in our nurturing plan. Each of these emails makes use as much as possible from the data that we have in Segment. Okay? How much? A lot. For example, here you got an email. It's a bit cut, but you get the idea. What we have here is that we have a congrats, an upgrade congrats. And we have an original mail at the bottom. It says, hey, thank you for upgrading. And we have a reply to that. Okay? And the reply says, hey, can we do a one-on-one? And it looks pretty natural. It isn't. The way it works is that we sync the data to Pipedrive, which is like our CRM. We capture the owner, which is like the sales rep of the customer. We send it back to Zapier to Segment, then to Customer.io, which means that when someone has been speaking with us at Mention, and we have a sales rep, we continue that relationship through automatic emails. It's the same person who's going to be sending you emails because we have that data of who's your owner. And so that is completely automatic. So the reply goes 5 minutes after the original mail. The original mail is from the owner, and the reply is from the customer success saying, hey, it's great, can we do a call? I have 70% open rate and 30% click rate on that one. Natural emails are 75, I'm trying to beat them. Again, more emails. For example, here we have the classic, I was looking at your account. Okay, so we take all of the data that we have in customer IO from segment, which is what's his plan, how much alerts did he do, like all of the data on the user. And then we automatically select the best plan for an upgrade. Okay, and we say, hey, I was looking at your account. And the name of the customer is Gary. Hey, Gary, I was looking at your account, and you can still add 3 team members and 1 alert in your plan. Go ahead, okay? Now, how natural is that? Extremely natural. Our customer success team wouldn't do something more than that, okay? And that's sent automatically with all of the data that we have in Customer IO. That works because Customer IO uses liquid templating, which is a very simple language, which enables us to do like if-then conditions. That's it. Lots more ideas that we are doing. Like we are working on getting the data from Augur, send the data to segment, which means that based on the refer, we can ask less data on sign up, capture the data from a third party, ping it back to us, and have much less fields. We can use segment to measure and store the engagement on your email in seconds. So for how long the email was open, between the open and the click. And we can do retargeting campaign. So for example, since I'm piping the data of the open back into segment, and that segment works with AdWall and Facebook ads, I can automatically stop sending emails when someone has not opened the past 3 or 5 emails and start retargeting, okay? So it's only one channel. And of course, you can do some A/B testing with a global bucket rate. And that's it. I'm Guillaume, I work at Mention. We have jobs open, and one's in my team. I'm looking for an intern back-end developer to do some more growth hacks. Thanks. Any questions? We can do them in French or in English. Come on. Okay, one question.
Comment vous conseillez de commencer si on n'a pas tout un schéma avec 130 mails différents et déjà comment est-ce que vous avez commencé chez Mention, vous avez implémenté un retargeting précis à partir d'une action donnée de non sign-up après avoir démarré l'inscription, etc.
Alors oui, donc la question c'est comment est-ce qu'on a démarré chez Mention. Alors Mention, la particularité c'est qu'entre guillemets quand je suis arrivé ça existait déjà, c'était déjà gros, il y avait déjà des emails. Cependant quand j'étais entrepreneur, généralement je commence par définir mes KPIs, je ne sais pas comment dire ça en français, mes points de mesure, et je fais des tunnels. Et je regarde où est-ce que j'ai un problème dans mon tunnel. Donc par exemple, j'ai une grosse perte entre le sign-up et l'activation. Okay, les gens ne s'activent pas. Et je dis, bon, ok, là j'ai un problème que je vais essayer de résoudre. Voilà. Et je résous les problèmes du début vers la fin en ajoutant des emails. Et j'essaye de me placer du point de vue d'utilisateur et me dire qu'est-ce qui me ferait, moi, en tant qu'utilisateur, agir. Et c'est pour ça que je fais des emails extrêmement targetés. Le but, c'est d'être le plus proche possible de son besoin et de lui envoyer le moins d'emails possible. Voilà. Je ne sais pas si ça répond à votre question. C'est plus donc sur les emails et ça que sur la création du plan. Ouais. Le premier, c'est de traquer. Si vous ne traquez pas, vous ne pouvez pas trouver votre problème. Pour moi, envoyer des emails ou faire du retargeting, c'est résoudre un problème de conversion. Si 100% de vos gens qui arrivent chez vous, ils sign up, 100% s'activent et 100% payent, bah, une fois que vous avez mesuré ça, vous n'avez pas besoin de faire grand-chose. Voilà. Généralement, ce qui se passe, c'est qu'on mesure, et puis après, on trouve les problèmes. Voilà. Ce qui se passe généralement chez les startups qui n'ont pas de tracking, c'est qu'ils connaissent le point d'entrée et le point de fin. Ils connaissent leurs visites, ils connaissent leur chiffre d'affaires et leur vente. Entre les deux, c'est le grand vide. Et donc, on met des points d'écoute, des sondes, et puis on voit ce qui se passe pour pouvoir comprendre du point de vue de l'utilisateur pourquoi est-ce qu'on en perd certains par ici, pourquoi d'autres par là. Et après, on essaie de résoudre chaque problème, un à un. Oui. Ouais, alors ma recommandation, c'est de mettre uniquement les principaux. Donc la question, c'est est-ce qu'on fait une grosse granularité sur les événements. Donc j'avais marqué de faire au début 3, 5, peut-être 10 KPIs. Et ça veut dire peut-être entre 5 et 20 événements. C'est déjà pas mal. Nous, on en a beaucoup chez Mention, probablement trop. Voilà, c'est un peu particulier. Mais vous n'avez pas besoin de beaucoup plus. Ce qui est bien, c'est d'en mettre, allez, 5, 10, maximum 20, et d'attendre un mois et de voir, OK, qu'est-ce que vous n'arrivez pas à résoudre comme question avec ces KPIs-là, avec ces événements-là. Et on va les ajouter au fur et à mesure. Si vous êtes trop granulaire, la conséquence, c'est que ce sera plus dur à analyser. Et plus vous êtes granulaire, plus il va vous falloir un data scientist pour trouver des corrélations. Voilà. Oui. Ouais, donc un peu sur le naming schema. Alors, bon, il y a trois types d'événements donc, chez Mention. Il y a l'identification, le track et le page. Une bonne partie de ce que vous dites sur le début, c'est surtout des événements page. Parce que la personne n'est pas dans votre app. Il est sur une version non signée. Et ces événements page, ils ont une particularité, c'est qu'en propriété, on met quelque chose qui s'appelle le page name et qui du coup va standardiser l'événement qui va dire, par exemple, viewed home page. Et vous, le nom de la propriété, name, ce sera juste home. Voilà. Donc ça va standardiser tous les événements page. C'est la bonne chose. Okay. Ensuite, on va standardiser tous les boutons, okay, selon l'objet que c'est. Et ensuite, très facilement, on arrive dans votre app. Voilà. Mais la standardisation des boutons et des pages via le page call, ça va normalement tout lisser jusqu'au sign-up. Okay. Oui. Oui. Alors la façon dont ça marche est très standard, notamment celui-ci. C'est que donc dans le mapper de segment, il y a deux façons de fonctionner. Soit votre événement ou un trait de l'événement est reconnu comme étant un trait standard. Okay. Il y a par exemple le name de l'utilisateur ou le revenu. Auquel cas, il y a une translation directe dans chaque intégration pour ce trait-là s'il existe. Par exemple, ils ont une translation pour revenu dans, je sais pas, 80% des outils d'analytics. Intercom, Google Analytics, Kissmetrics, et donc ça va apparaître ça va le traduire, ça va le mettre dans leur format à eux pour que ce soit reconnu comme une propriété de revenu. D'accord. Et on peut même balancer d'ailleurs la currency avec 2-3 autres détails comme ça pour que ça puisse être vraiment bien calculé. Et si ce n'est pas un événement standard ou une propriété standard, alors ça va juste recréer un événement custom dans l'outil si les événements custom sont reconnus. Mais vous perdez un peu de flexibilité. Typiquement, il y a certains rapports de Kissmetrics ou Google Analytics e-commerce qui ne fonctionnent que si vous avez envoyé les événements de revenus correctement. Sinon, les rapports n'existent pas. Vous avez juste une propriété numérique qui dit, bah tiens, billing 99. Ok, super. Mais on ne peut pas calculer de lifetime value, on ne peut pas calculer de panier moyen, il y a des trucs qu'on ne peut pas faire. Voilà. Oui.
Le premier segment justement du plan sur segment.io, c'est quelque chose qui est gratuit à 50 000 événements par mois. D'expérience, tu fais fonctionner quoi comme ça?
Alors, ça dépend beaucoup de la granularité du coup qu'on veut mettre en place. Ouais, voilà, du trafic, tout ça. Généralement, ça couvre toutes les startups bootstrap. Hein. C'est-à-dire que si on suppose que quelqu'un fait chez vous, je sais pas, on va dire 50 événements, okay, au cours d'un mois, ce qui est déjà pas mal. C'est-à-dire qu'il a vu une dizaine de pages, il y a quelqu'un qui sont une dizaine de boutons, il a fait pas mal de features dans votre app. Voilà. Bon, ben, on peut déjà en couvrir 1000. Hein. Donc, en étant extrêmement granulaire, on peut avoir 1000 users par mois. Ce qui est bootstrap, ou 10 fois moins, 10 fois plus, voilà. Donc 50 c'est très granulaire pour une startup bootstrap, vu que vous avez généralement, je sais pas, 5 événements. Donc ça veut dire que dans ce cas-là, vous pouvez avoir 10 000 users par mois. Okay, ce qui est pas mal pour une startup bootstrap. Après, ça va assez vite, hein. C'est-à-dire que si on est granulaire comme moi et qu'on a beaucoup d'utilisateurs, typiquement, nous, 300 000 utilisateurs, on envoie un peu plus de 10 millions d'événements. Et tous les utilisateurs ne font pas quelque chose tous les mois, quand même. Voilà. Donc, il faut voir sur l'utilisateur actif combien ça fait.
Parce que étant donné que c'est uniquement une sorte de proxy qui va permettre de mapper, de binder, comment est-ce que tu justifies ton ROI face à l'implémentation des N solutions?
Ouais, ça dépend. Alors, donc la question, c'est est-ce que c'est rentable d'implémenter Segment par rapport à implémenter chaque solution une à une. Segment, typiquement, alors je ne connais plus leur name pricing, mais je crois qu'à 149, on a droit à 10 millions d'événements. Alors, je ne sais pas combien coûtent vos développeurs, c'est la question, hein, mais avec 149$, pour moi, il ne fait pas grand-chose. Il va travailler 1 heure ou 2. Implémenter, typiquement chez nous, chez Mention, on a une web app, on a une app Mac, une app Windows, une app Chrome, une app Android et une app iOS. Okay, donc quand je vais rajouter un outil à travers, on a à peu près 120 événements, il fait 120 x 5, donc il se fait donc dans les 800 événements. Voilà, ça prend un petit paquet de temps. C'est pas rentable. Après, ça dépend encore une fois du marketeur. Si vous avez un marketeur un peu nerveux qui a envie d'essayer un nouvel outil, mieux vaut utiliser Segment. Si le marketeur c'est vous et que vous êtes content avec un outil que vous n'avez pas en changé, pas essayer un nouvel outil, ça va. Mais typiquement dans les startups, vous n'avez pas les moyens de vous payer Kissmetrics au début. Okay, c'est trop cher. Vous utilisez Google Analytics, c'est très bien. Voilà. Bon, je vais vous recommander Amplitude, 49$, 10 millions d'événements ou 105 millions d'événements, très bien aussi. Et au bout d'un moment, je vous le souhaite, vous allez avoir beaucoup de business et vous allez commencer à devenir riche. Vous n'allez pas vous offrir Kissmetrics. Et à ce moment-là, vous appuyez sur un bouton et vous n'avez pas de boulot à faire. Vous switchez directement à une nouvelle implémentation, un nouvel outil. Et si ce outil-là ne vous plaît pas, vous partez, vous allez ailleurs. Alors pas forcément, ça c'est la question, c'est qu'on peut switcher et envoyer la nouvelle data. Voilà. Il y a une possibilité de ce qu'on appelle faire du replay et qui est de renvoyer l'ancienne data, mais ça c'est un paiement à chaque fois. Et je ne connais pas le tarif.
Et justement sur les outils implémentés, Amplitude, VS Mixpanel, c'est quoi ton retour? À quel moment on utilise lequel?
Ouais, alors donc la question c'est quel outil d'analytics est-ce que je recommande, en fonction de quoi? Alors historiquement j'ai une préférence pour Kissmetrics, parce que l'intégration des utilisateurs et des événements est mieux faite que Mixpanel. Mixpanel, ils ont ces deux instances séparées pour les utilisateurs et les événements, ce qui fait que c'est assez compliqué. Bon, je sais que le pricing de Kissmetrics a beaucoup augmenté. Et dernièrement, il y a une startup qui s'est lancée qui s'appelle Amplitude, enfin dernièrement, il y a à peu près 1 an, qui est vraiment très bien pour 2 raisons. Premièrement, ça coûte 49$, et 49$, c'est pas cher. Pour 5 millions d'événements, ça couvre pas mal. Et ça a une vision user-centric qui respecte vraiment le schéma de Segment, parce que Kissmetrics ne respecte pas vraiment ce schéma-là. En fait, Kissmetrics, ils ne comprennent pas la différence entre les traits utilisateurs et les propriétés des événements. Ils mettent tout à plat, ce qui a des avantages et des inconvénients. Mais Amplitude respecte bien cette séparation et permet d'avoir des données en live, de faire des tunnels, de splitter les funnels justement par propriété, et de pouvoir dire, tiens, je vais voir comment est-ce que chaque type d'utilisateur traverse le funnel. Pour 49, c'est vraiment pas mal. Donc, jusqu'à ce que vous ayez épuisé les besoins d'Amplitude, par exemple, restez là-dessus. Plus Google Analytics, parce qu'on s'en sert toujours sur l'acquisition. Il y a des datas que seul Google a et qui ne sont nulle part ailleurs. Donc, ma reco, généralement, c'est ces 2 outils-là pour ce qui est Analytics. Après, il y a plein d'autres outils qui sont extrêmement pratiques. Vous avez vu tous ceux que j'utilise. On fait du recording de sessions en live pour pouvoir faire du support et comprendre ce que font les utilisateurs. On fait du customer support avec les mêmes data. On fait du chat avec les mêmes data aussi, du survey. Voilà. Tout ça via Segment. C'est pas Segment qui en fait fait le... Excuse-moi. Non, c'est via Segment. On utilise Full Story via Segment, ce qui fait qu'on est capable, dans un outil d'enregistrement de session, de voir qu'est-ce que fait l'utilisateur et que ce soit attaché aux data de l'utilisateur. Ce qui veut dire que je peux dire, OK, je vais regarder tous les gens qui ont essayé cette feature-là et qui n'ont pas réussi. Et je rejoue leur session, c'est un peu comme le zapping, hein. C'est-à-dire qu'on regarde les sessions comme ça à la chaîne, et au bout de la 5e, vous comprenez où est-ce que vous vous êtes planté. Hein. Oui. Oui. Excellente question. Pourquoi utiliser Google Analytics en plus de Kissmetrics et Mixpanel? Parce que Kissmetrics et Mixpanel sont extrêmement bons pour tout ce qui est utilisateur identifié. Donc une fois que la personne a fini par faire un sign-up, ils sont plutôt mauvais dans la gestion des utilisateurs anonymes, et surtout vous n'aurez aucune data côté session. Alors quand je vous fais le slide sur la séparation de la session et l'utilisateur, c'est pas pour dire forcément que l'un est meilleur que l'autre, c'est généralement on se sert côté utilisateur. Maintenant côté session, vous aurez des infos ultra importantes. Quel est le taux de bounce? Okay, quel est le temps moyen passé sur une page? Ça, typiquement, vous n'avez dans aucun de ces outils-là, le temps moyen sur une page. Seul Google le calcule. Pourquoi? J'en sais rien, c'est comme ça. Vous pouvez aussi avoir des datas sur plus granulaires, le linker à Google Webmaster Tools ou à des outils sociaux. Voilà. Et ça, typiquement, Kissmetrics, Amplitude ne le font pas, ils le laissent à Google Analytics. Et donc, moi, je me sers des deux en parallèle. Oui.
Je crois que tu as dit au début que chez Notion, votre CRM était plugué sur Segment.io aussi. Alors, tu peux décrire un peu ça
Oui, bien sûr. Alors, attends, je vais remonter directement la slide, hein, ça va être plus simple. Voilà, ça c'est un exemple. Donc typiquement, notre CRM, enfin ce qui ressemble à un CRM, c'est Pipedrive. Ça pourrait être Salesforce aussi. Le bénéfice de ça, c'est que, alors là, il n'y a pas une intégration directe. Là, on passe par Zapier. Ça marche bien aussi. C'est-à-dire qu'on envoie, on fait de la détection de prospects ou de clients à risque. Donc on regarde le chemin d'upgrade, le chemin de downgrade, okay, selon des règles. Donc on va dire, bah, tiens, quelqu'un qui n'est pas payant, mais a utilisé 5 features, a invité 5 collègues et est venu 5 fois sur les 5 derniers jours, c'est un client chaud. Okay, et ça, on peut le voir dans n'importe laquelle de nos apps. Donc, il se trouve qu'on utilise Customario pour faire des segments avec ces gens-là. On les envoie à Zapier, on les ajoute dans un tunnel Pipedrive et les commerciaux les appellent. Voilà. Et donc là, on a fait la détection de prospects et on l'a envoyé. Bien sûr, il y a eu des emails automatiques pour pouvoir créer les appels, histoire que les commerciaux aient le moins à faire parce qu'on sait qu'ils sont tous très feignants, qui veulent leur com. Mais on fait ça aussi au downgrade. C'est-à-dire que quand quelqu'un ne fait pas les actions d'un client normal, c'est-à-dire qu'il arrête de se connecter toutes les semaines, par exemple, il n'ouvre plus nos emails, ou on a un compte avec 9 sièges, si on compte en sièges chez nous, et il y a 8 sièges sur 9 qui ne se sont pas connectés le mois dernier. C'est mauvais signe. Et donc ça, on détecte, on l'envoie à quelqu'un qui va s'occuper du Customer Success, on lui dit contacte-le, il faut comprendre ce qui se passe. Et on s'est rendu compte qu'en faisant intervenir l'humain exactement au bon moment, on était capable de réduire le churn énormément. Voilà. Parce que quand quelqu'un vous parle et vous explique « Ok, c'est quoi votre problème, pourquoi vous n'êtes pas revenu ?» Des fois, on n'arrive pas à l'éviter, mais souvent, on arrive à comprendre le problème utilisateur et on arrive à le ramener et à le refaire utiliser. Voilà. Donc ça, c'est une façon d'intégrer avec Pipedrive dans les deux sens, qui est le CRM le moins cher qu'on utilise. Mais si vous avez Salesforce et un peu de moyens, c'est encore mieux. Oui. Oui, c'est complètement indépendant. En fait, on va prendre un compte chez Kissmetrics et on va aller récupérer la clé Kissmetrics et on va la mettre en fait dans le panel segment. En fait, pour Kissmetrics, ils le voient même pas parce qu'ils ont des datas. Enfin, le JS Kissmetrics est loadé sur la page et il y a des datas qui arrivent dans leur API côté serveur. Mais pour eux, ça pourrait être toi qui l'as fait directement. Voilà. Donc, il n'y a pas de discount, il n'y a pas de... Généralement, ils ne le savent même pas. Ils ne s'en rendent pas compte.
Mais du coup, si la donnée, elle reste quand même sur Amplitude, c'est-à-dire que si je ne paie pas sur Amplitude pour stocker la donnée, alors que je pourrais, sur le même plan sur Kissmetrics, la stocker.
Je n'ai pas compris. On la reprend.
La donnée, elle reste sur Segment.
Alors, ouais, donc Segment stocke vos données. C'est une excellente question. Où sont mes données? C'est un des avantages et des inconvénients. Segment, c'est un hub. Donc, en théorie, les datas arrivent, sont transformées, sont envoyées et c'est fini. Okay, en pratique, parce que vous pouvez upgrader un jour vers un plan entreprise où vous aurez envie d'activer de Redshift, où vous aurez envie de faire des analyses SQL dessus ou de faire du replay, il stocke vos datas. Voilà. Il les stocke dans un Amazon S3 et voilà. Sauf que vous n'y avez pas accès jusqu'à ce que vous accédez au plan entreprise qui est à 75 000 $ par an. Donc on va dire que globalement vous n'y avez pas accès. C'est pour ça que je recommande donc d'utiliser Amplitude. Bon, c'est moitié moins cher, ça reste cher quand même. Ou kin.io qui est pas mal pour faire des dashboards parce qu'à 600 $, vous avez un accès qui est genre SQL. Vous pouvez faire des requêtes genre SQL et ça fait des graphes directement pour pouvoir mettre sur un tableau, un écran géant à l'entrée de votre startup avec vos chiffres miraculeux. Kin, K-E-E-N.io. keen.io. Voilà. $600, je crois, c'est 10 millions d'événements, à peu près. À chaque fois que je donne des prix, généralement comme ça, c'est des prix pour 10 millions d'événements, c'est ceux qu'on utilise. Voilà. Attention, votre stack peut grossir assez vite. Hein. C'est-à-dire que si vous rajoutez du Kissmetrics à 700, du Keen à 600, plus Segment, plus Amplitude, ça commence à faire une grosse stack. Donc il faut en avoir le besoin quand même. Vous ne vous amusez pas à ajouter des outils comme ça juste pour le plaisir. En tout cas, ce ne sera pas de ma faute. Je décline toute responsabilité. OK. Ben, merci beaucoup.